Welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and I had something funny to say and forgot about it. Oh, yes. I'm doing my most accurate Syril Karn representation while trying to schedule this fucking show. I literally, we had something like a 40-minute production meeting where we were going over, you said 5 minutes, we'll look at the schedule. It turned into 40 because we were trying to figure out when everything in 2026 was going to come out. If you are hearing the audio version of this, or you are listening to this on the podcasting apps, you are only getting the audio version. But if you happened to be looking at it on video, you would see my bed is actually behind me when we record. At one point, I became so frustrated trying to figure out when the fuck Maul Shadow Lord's gonna come out that I just went and laid face down on the bed for about 30 seconds.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
I love scheduling this podcast.
I wish they would literally be required to, when they announce a project, be like, okay, this is where it is on the calendar right now. It can change, but this is where we're putting it now. And everybody can go on Disney.com and see it.
Give me spring 2026. Give me fall 2026. Let me vaguely plan.
Just sometime. Just give me something. Don't just say 2026. I don't like when they do that because then that could literally mean December 31st. And I don't like when they do that.
It is not easy trying to schedule a Star Wars podcast. And you would think that because they have backed off the streaming shows, this would make our life easier. No, dear listener, the fuck it does not. It continues to vex us because now we also have to plan around the movies because the movies are coming back. And that was not something that was happening when we started this podcast. We have gone through the entire streaming era and now we have to deal with movies again. We started in I think February 2021.
Yeah, we started with the beginning of essentially streaming Disney or Star Wars streaming. We essentially started with the beginning and then yeah, that's crazy.
Only Mandalorian season 1 and 2 had come out when we started the podcast. It was only those two. We're still here. And what are we talking about today, Bradley?
Today we're talking about Andor season 2, episode 5. I have friends everywhere. Cassian on Ghorman, Syril on Coruscant, Bix failing, Wilmon trapped. Kleya has a serious problem. Charles, what's one thing you liked and one thing you did not?
One thing I really liked about this episode was Cassian Andor's Varian Sky disguise. I thought it was very sexy, and that pleased me a great deal. He was walking around in a very nice Star Wars suit, being attractive. That was a thing I really liked about this episode. One thing that I disliked about this episode, it's more of a call forward to next week, but this kind of being the end of the Wilmon and Saw Gerrera plot is kind of weird to me. Because we've already watched, we're pre-recording a couple of episodes. We've already watched episode 6, and it is weird that he's not in that. This is the end of that storyline. And as the end of that storyline, it's very weird. We don't find out what happens to Wilmon until a year later, in which he is dropped on Yavin with no explanation.
Okay, I didn't think about that, yeah.
That's a little weird to me. I don't know I really liked that in the broader context of the show, because also, he will never address this scene. This will not have any lasting effects on him.
Got it.
He will never talk about it again in the show. He will never analyze the time that he huffed drugs in the air with Saw Gerrera. That will not ever be brought up.
I think this calls back to what you keep saying, which is this is one of those things they cut for time, essentially.
They absolutely would have addressed this.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it almost seems like he's stepping off the straight and narrow path with Luthen a little bit to get into the crazy of Saw, but then we get to Yavin and he's there and there's no explanation.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily know that Yavin and Luthen are separate entities, even though that's going to be a really important plot point of the final episode of the finale, that the people on Yavin don't really like Luthen very much. It's kind of weird structurally how this fits into the broad overarching narrative of this season. Bradley, one thing you liked and one thing you did not.
One thing I liked, actually, funny enough, I didn't think we were going to have the same thing, but I literally said I love the fashion this week just in time for Pride Month. Cassian and honestly also Syril were both serving. Cassian in his variant sky outfit, yes, his disguise is definitely sexy. I loved the whole fashion designer, undercover kind of situation. He really nailed it. Cyril's travel outfit is all red with the beret. Like I kind of love that too. They were both kind of serving. So for me, I
He's
really
slaying
like
a little bit, I fear.
he is slaying a little too much, unfortunately. So I did like that. And then what I didn't like, you actually kind of semi brought this up with how the Wilmon storyline kind of stops in this episode. It's kind of I thought that some of the storylines were a little disconjointed or just didn't make sense because I know how like last week, they popped in Mon for a second to kind of introduce the Ghorman guy, the Ghorman senator or whatever, but then like she's completely absent from this episode. There's no
She's there's one scene.
bridging.
There's one scene I think of. No,
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 she's
you're right.
completely
She's
absent.
completely absent from this episode.
So it was a little disconjointed because I know she's in next week, right? So it's kind of like a weird, like, here she is for a second, and then we don't talk about her for a full fucking episode, and then here she is again in a different, totally new plot line. So I'm like, it is interesting how like it's a little disconjointed. I also thought like the big stuff was a little like kind of like a plot line in this episode, and I didn't really like that. I don't know. It just seemed like an afterthought. And I think again, it's stuff that like is cutting room floor. Like, oh, there might have been, if this was a full season, like a bunch of different storylines, and Bix would have been one of that. Dealing with her trauma would have been a whole nother storyline. And I feel like we kind of get it, but then we kind of don't get it here. And I think they do kind of cut it short here. I think they address it a little bit next episode, but it's not like as prominent or relevant anymore. And it kind of just goes away and it's never brought up again. So it's kind of
Yeah,
one of
you
those random
can.
things.
We'll talk about it. You can kind of see the narrative arc of Bix to where she undergoes this trauma at the end of season one, and she doesn't really get to have any agency in that. She just gets to get rescued from the hotel. She also undergoes a trauma at the end of the first arc. That one she does actually have agency in because she beats the dude to death with a hammer and then shoots his fuck ass fellow fascist with a shotgun,
Right.
which is very cool of her to do and correct. And then this one, we see her like coping in an unhealthy way, and then she starts to learn to cope in a healthy way. But I think you're right. I think a lot of it is like speed run, particularly where we'll sort of find her in the third arc. And mild spoilers, she is not in the fourth arc.
Right.
She is not there.
So
So right now we're at she's kind of getting over it. I will say getting over her trauma to the point where she can like take on these missions in a healthy way again.
right.
And we'll talk about it when we talk about the Luthen scene as well. But I absolutely agree. This is something that I think they gave us just enough to kind of know what was going on. And we'll talk about the one scene that I've been talking about. I really want to talk about, but it is nice to see them try to tackle this. I think they needed more time with it. I think they could have done a really, really good job with this storyline. Like they already do a decent job, but I think it really could have been something special if they just had more time.
Right.
All right, we're still in splitting everything up. So who are we talking about first?
First, we're going to talk about Cyril. So here we go.
You.
Well, we're going to talk about the first half of Cyril. I did split Cyril's storylines up, one on Ghorman and then one on Coruscant. So those are two separate sections.
Okay.
So bear with me.
Let's talk about Syril on Ghorman.
Section 1. Cyril informs his mother he's traveling to Coruscant. Their holocom call is still monitored by the Ghorman front. Suddenly, ISB agents arrive at the office and a worker triggers an alarm prompting Ghorman to shut down their signal interception station. The ISB agent claims they're sweeping for listening devices and detains everyone, including Cyril. After the sweep, Cyril informs his employees that a listening device was found in his office. They'll all be interviewed. Enza and Caro discuss Cyril's background, revealing his dishonorable dismissal of Morlana 1, and later Caro admits to Syril he believes the ISB is running a shadow government and urges him to investigate the Empire's transportation on Ghorman. At work, Syril discreetly pockets a data chip and meets Sam in the square, passing him the chip while buying a souvenir spider. Enza examines the data from the chip, which contains items marked MSR, or military security required, and she insists they analyze the data further before involving Caro.
So this very first sequence where Cyril's on the call and he gets interrupted and he starts chewing the ISB guy out. Either Syril is doing way better acting about being annoyed that his office is being invaded by the ISB. Either he's doing way better acting than I gave him credit for, or this is not an act and he genuinely is this annoyed.
Okay, so here you go. Are you ready? I think he's genuinely annoyed because he knows that he's currently working with the ISB and that this ISB guy does not know that and is an idiot because he does not know that because he doesn't have enough clearance, so he's not as important as Syril is because Syril has the clearance.
Oh, so you think Syril is perfectly a-okay with putting on a show and genuinely being annoyed that his
I
actual
think
day
yes.
job
I think he
because he
is.
knows that he can't actually get in trouble?
Yes, I think he's genuinely annoyed and genuinely trying to show off how much of a bigger agent he is, I guess, in this, even though the other guy has no clue.
In fact, actually, I just skipped down to my next note, which is the scene where he comes back and he like gets really mad and kicks the thing.
Yeah.
My next note is actually he seems really mad he isn't totally in control of this situation.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
think,
seems to be pissing him off,
right. I think
which
he
is
genuinely is mad. He's like, oh, fuck, like my mission is getting out of my control, essentially, because he knows what he's doing. And actually, I think he's also mad because he knows the Ghorman front is listening to him. So he thinks that the ISB agents coming in are ruining that. They're kind of ruining his like misinformation he's spreading.
well, I also think that Cyril really believes this is very important for episode 8. Cyril really does believe in the Empire.
Right.
He really believes that he's on a mission. We'll find out what that mission is later in this episode. He really believes he's on a mission and he really believes in the Empire and he really believes in the institution of the Empire and in law and order. And for that law and order to come in and mess with his office, that's going to cheese him off, regardless of whether or not he knows if he can get in trouble for it or not.
Right.
He knows that he's not going to get in that much trouble because his girlfriend is the big boss of the ISB on Ghorman.
Right.
But this guy doesn't know that.
No, he has no idea.
So I would also love to just kick things at work when work annoys me. I'd love to have that high level of a job, but unfortunately, I do not. We do get the return of Cyril's backstory. His whole thing in Morlana 1, that does come into play here.
Right.
Because that's, I think, something that really convinces the Ghorman front that he's playing ball with them.
Exactly. They're like, oh shit, he was dishonorably discharged. He like got reprimanded for trying to do like the right thing. Like, it's actually really good cover if you think about it, because he on the surface, what he was doing, it looks like, oh, he just wasn't following the rules and he was rebelling against authority or whatever.
Yep.
But rebelling to, in his mind, do the right thing, which is solve the murder of his fellow officers.
Which, when we find out about what the Ghorman's front deal is, definitely makes sense for them.
Right.
To be like, oh, you were like put in trouble for doing the right thing.
Exactly.
But you're not like rebelling in the same sense we are, because I don't think the Ghormans think that they are rebelling against the Empire. But we'll get to that in a second. I do think if this show had been 5 seasons, I think that we would have gotten substantially more of this element of the plot. I think Morlana 1 would have come back in, and I think we would have seen the return of Linus Mosk, his little friend from season 1.
I think he would have been a
that
great
would have been
addition.
a bigger part of this.
I do too, because I think, like, without going too crazy into the future plot lines, I think that if they had expanded this, you could have had Moss come in and be like a part of this kind of thing without knowing. So Cyril would have involved him in this secret mission without knowing the actual secret mission. So I feel like it would have been this really interesting kind of thing to have both of them in it, but only one of them has all the information.
Yeah, and that's one relationship we lost in season 2 that I feel really the show suffers for its loss, because that was a really compelling relationship in the first season between those two men, and to not have it here, and this definitely would have been a bigger element of Cyril's plot, especially now that we're tying Morlana 1 in. That is something its absence is felt. So let's talk about apologizing for fascist governments.
Okay.
And how you justify the existence of a fascist government, because turns out the Ghorman front not actually rebelling against imperial rule.
Right.
They consider themselves patriots.
Yeah, they're like, wait a minute. Something is being wrong here.
Because their thing is, well, stop me if any of this starts to sound familiar, by the way. there's this group of people who are lower down on the totem pole who are doing heinous things that are bad. And obviously, it's not that the system is specifically set up by uncaring monsters at the top to allow the system to run to personally enrich their goals. No, those people seem perfectly cool and chill. It's just the lower level people are doing stuff that the higher level people just don't know about. And if they only knew about it, if they knew about the atrocities that were being carried out by their lower ranking government officials, man, they would just put a stop to that. Obviously, these things don't happen in the system. It's not that the system is broken. No, it's just one guy,
Yeah.
and nobody at the top would ever allow this to happen. So this is a completely bullshit thing to think. Obviously, the system is working as designed. Palpatine knows what's happening here. You cannot justify the existence of the Empire. And you cannot pretend that there are any lines that Palpatine or Vader or Yularen or Tarkin would not cross.
I just love how Caro is just like he's convinced himself so hard that like it must be a conspiracy theory. Like it's because it makes no sense that
It
the
makes no fucking sense.
like the government can't be wrong in any way, shape, or form. It's gotta be like, oh, Palpatine, like he's such a great guy. Like, why he would never
I
let
see him
this
on the
happen.
HoloNet news, and he's just a kindly old man.
It's
He
crazy
would
how they've almost
never.
bought into the propaganda against themselves. Like, it's so weird, interesting. Like, but it's what's crazy about this is that not only are they trying to rebel, but you're right, they think that they're rebelling in the name of patriotism. They're not rebelling in the name of literally crippling the government that is oppressing them. They're because they think
Mhm.
that they are doing the right thing, which is what everybody thinks, obviously. But I just think that it's funny that they think that, oh, the essentially the FBI is like actually in control
It's the
and
FBI is running a shadow government. It's
yeah,
they think there's a deep state.
yes.
They think there's like a deep state that's run by the ISB that's secretly
Hmm.
controlling everything. And obviously the Emperor doesn't know what's happening on Ghorman. And if he could just know, if we could just tell people, it's that old delusion of like, well, if we could just tell people about our struggles,
Right.
then they would care, they would rise up and generally no.
No, yeah.
Generally that doesn't happen because one, we see the propaganda machine of the Empire is so effective. We see that through Edie Karn and all of that you're going to struggle against that propaganda machine. But then also like the Emperor knows what's happening here. He doesn't
Right.
care.
No, he doesn't give a
This is
shit.
yeah, this is what he wants. This
Exactly.
is the system he wants to set up because it furthers his own agenda as a Sith Lord.
Right.
It furthers his own pursuit of power to have this Imperial machine behind him. But the galaxy doesn't realize that because they haven't read the script.
Right.
They
They
haven't
haven't
spent
seen the
time
rest
on
of the movie.
Wikipedia. They haven't watched
They haven't
Star
watched the rest
Wars
of the movies.
Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. They don't understand what's happening here.
Right. They didn't get the behind the curtain look before everything went to shit. Section 2. On Coruscant, Kleya is listening to galactic transmissions. Luthen enters and asks about Cassian's status, and Kleya confirms he's en route. Later, she continues to use the secret console to eavesdrop on a conversation between Davos Golden and his art consultant Mishko. They discuss a recently discovered forgery in his collection. Davo demands a full security sweep of the collection, and a hidden listening device is shown under one of the pieces. Later, Kleya meets with Mishko. She reveals that Skolden is furious over the forged face and has ordered a full audit of his collection, and at night, Kleya informs Luthen about the forgery. She fears the audit will uncover the hidden microphone. After arguing, she insists they retrieve the microphone during the upcoming party and warns that they must be ready if they're caught.
Let's jump back and talk about the very opening moments of this episode because the radio opening is one of the coolest openings they've done.
I didn't notice it the first time. The second viewing, I was like, "Oh, that's wild," because it's probably the coolest thing ever, only because it seems random at first, and then when it like finally kind of clicks in a little bit, it's like, "Oh wait, she's listening to the
She's
theme."
doing listening devices and it's going along with the theme because you can hear the thing mentioning it's the name of bugs, like the where the bugs are located, a 3-digit code, and then it cues up what it's recorded. It's recording she's listening back to. So we know that they have bugs called or bugs on Corellia and Ryloth.
Okay,
Like they've planted a lot of bugs.
right.
all across the galaxy that they're listening to, or at least bugs named Corellia and Ryla. There is a moment where Kleya is like out in the gallery and she like puts on like this customer service face. I just have to shout out this actress for having customer service face. Like you can tell the customer service face.
I just love that this is her first like acting role.
God, she's so fucking good.
I don't know
This
how
is
she did
like
it.
her season.
It really is because how did she? I mean, like they took something. She made herself stand out so much. She was already a standout, I think, in the first season. However, they really developed the fuck out of this character in this second season. Like they full on gave her like almost like main character status. Like I was
Yeah. She
like,
is the main character of
I
one of
was
the
like,
episodes.
whoa, like so good. But this is just
And,
like
and
we're just getting glimpses
arguably
of her.
and arguably the best episode of the entire show.
Yeah,
Not my personal favorite, my second favorite episode of the entire show. She just straight up is the main character.
right,
I also love, speaking of like understanding Kleya's role as a customer service person, I also love that she's able to get intel out of the other assistant,
mm,
like the gallery curator,
right,
because they can relate to each other as subordinates.
right.
That's why Kleya, you know how in Star Wars Rebels, Hera is Spectre 2? Even
Okay,
though that makes no goddamn sense
because
because
she's the pilot.
she's the boss
Yeah.
of the operation. But the reason that Hera is Spectre 2 is because it's to throw the Empire off because they need to believe that the Jedi is Spectre 1
Oh, okay.
and they will assume that the Jedi is in charge. And if they're going to divert resources, they're going to divert resources to going after Kanan. But Hera's actually the one in charge, but it doesn't look like it on the outside. Kleya has a very similar thing going on to where she positions herself as Luthen's assistant, but she's really the one pulling the strings. And part of it is she can commiserate with another person who works for someone else and get
Right.
the inside scoop. Because assistants know everything. You want to know something? Talk to the assistant.
I do love that. I love how like the other assistant is so comfortable complaining about Davo. She's like, "Oh yeah, girl, like he's fucking pissed."
Yep.
I love it.
Yep. Because that'll happen. And later on in the next episode, she's like, "You didn't tell anybody, did you? You didn't tell Luthen about the reappraisal?" Oh, girl,
Absolutely.
no.
No, 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 no.
No, I would never. So this argument that Luthen and Kleya have in the at the end of the toward the end of the episode, I love the way this shows how overwhelmed both of them are becoming.
Right.
Because that's sort of the arc that's happening with them. The rebellion is outgrowing them.
Exactly. We have too many plates spinning and not enough hands.
Yeah, and that's what it is they're both pissed off because this is now a thing that's like out of their control or feels out of their control because Kleya pushed them to grow bigger and Luthen clearly wanted to be more cautious.
Right.
And then he's turning around and blaming her and she's like, "Shut the fuck up." And I love this moment for both these characters, and I also love watching these two actors play off each other.
They have such a good dynamic, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because it does get a lot better later in the season. But and I didn't realize how good their connection was until that episode. But I feel like, God, I feel like they could have had their own show. Like I could have watched a whole nother, again, why we needed 5 seasons of this show,
Well,
honestly.
3 to 5, but yeah, like we
Yeah,
could have had more time with them as
right,
this progressed. And I do think that Kleya kind of begins to eclipse Luthen in this season, and also that's fine.
right.
Definitely in the next episode, but also there is a ongoing character arc of him kind of burning his life for her. And so I definitely think that her kind of beginning to eclipse him in terms of like prominence in the story also plays into that as well.
Section 3. Cassian meets someone to arrange travel to Ghorman. He assumes the identity of Varian Sky, a fashion industry worker, and receives an earpiece and luggage. He reviews the details of his identity at a spaceport terminal before arriving at Ghorman and checking into the hotel in Palmo. A porter, Thela, shows him to his room and shares his personal connection to the Tarkin massacre, occurred when Grand Moff Tarkin landed his cruiser on unarmed civilians. Cassian thanks him for his candor, and later he meets Enza at the cafe, warning her about the dangers of rushing into rebellion and advising more discretion. The next day, he meets Carol Rylands at a showroom, providing him with a secure code crystal for radio contact. Carol reveals the Empire's secret armory in Palmo City and the Ghorman Front's imperial source. Cassian cautions against trusting an informant, and they acknowledge their lack of tactical skill and need guidance. He proposes staying in touch. At night, Sam briefs Cassian on a transport pattern as an Imperial convoy travels through the street, and the rebels suggest using a tunnel system to slide cargo down for pickup. The next morning, Carol meets Cassian at a calf house, asking if reinforcements will support the planned raid. Cassian believes that it's possible, but criticizes the Ghorman Front's inexperience and public approach, fearing exposure. Cassian leaves, unimpressed.
Okay, I have a lot of notes here. Let's start with this amazing, seedy little travel office that they have.
The one where the two people were clearly fucking before he got there.
Yeah, my next note was good for you, girl.
Yeah.
Because, like, she comes out and greets him, and when he gives the passphrase, it's this, like, giant dude that comes out. And I'm like, you know what, girl? Good for you.
I love that.
I love he definitely interrupted them fucking in the middle of the day.
Middle of the day. It's like
middle of the day.
I love how their priorities are.
They are definitely in order.
Yeah.
When Cassian gets his information on the headpiece, many sources have reported that is the voice of Sam Witwer, aka Darth Maul and Starkiller. And if you're listening to this show, there's a good chance you know who Sam Witwer is.
I didn't catch that. Okay, interesting. I
that
thought
is
it was
in
just
fact Sam Witwer,
the dude alien guy, but okay, that makes more sense.
Nope, that is in fact our good buddy Sam Witwer.
I like that.
My next note for this section is, quote, slay Cassian.
Because he does.
Because he does. Because he gets into character.
He's so good at Varian Sky. Like, I feel like, first of all, can we just talk about how Varian Sky is such a cool name anyway?
That is such a fucking cool name.
It's such a James Bond, like, level, like, name. Like, it's just so
Varian
cool.
Sky, fashion designer.
Right. Like, oh,
it's
God,
so cool.
I kind of fucking love it.
Do you want to tell us about the Ghorman twink bellhop?
The Ghorman twink bellhop. Your favorite character in the show?
My favorite character in the show. This random twink that works at the hotel.
He is played by Stefan Crepon. I didn't notice anything that he's done. I do see some French shorts. So again, we're getting into the all Ghormans are either French
the
or
Ghormans
European.
are just French.
It says he was born in France.
It's space France.
So this is the first one that I've confirmed that he was born in France.
He is actually French.
Yes, he's actually a French person. So that is great. And also 2 years younger or 3 years younger than me. So that is disgusting. But
oh, wow. He actually is a twink.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I do not like that. But such a great character.
Welcome to starting to get older as a gay man.
Yeah, I don't like that. Speaking of gay men, what did you think about their interaction?
My next note literally reads, I cannot stand these two eye-fucking each other.
So my weird, like, in my brain theory is that Varian Sky is actually gay. And then Cassian is pretending, or he's getting into quote unquote character. And so part of his character is he's flirting with the bellhop because he's like, this is what my character would do.
This is also how my character would get information.
That part.
I had canon accepted. I buy that.
I buy that Varian Sky's a gay.
So to be clear, this Ghorman bellhop, who I think you said has a name?
Thela.
So Thela does mention having a wife.
Yeah, but what is that?
One line, he mentions having a wife who is never brought up again.
My other headcanon is that all Ghormans are bisexual.
I agree. I wholly, based on the Ghormans, I fully believe that every single one of these people is bisexual.
My thing is that that's their culture, that every single person on Ghorman
every single one of them is bisexual, and 100%. They all have open relationships.
100%. I take that as canon.
I fully believe that.
That is my thought process.
And honestly, that planet sounds great.
You know what? I mean,
you're surrounded by hot people all of the time.
I love it. honestly. And
I
they're most of
love
them are
it.
fashion designers, so there you go. It's
Exactly.
very
They all
like,
work in fashion.
well, in this city, I guess they work in fashion,
Lord.
but yeah,
We do have to have a serious talk about this scene because this is where we get some explanation on the Tarkin massacre.
right.
And we got it mentioned a little bit last episode.
Hmm.
So Thela kind of explains what the Tarkin massacre was finally. And that was that Grand Moff Tarkin, being the debatably gay man that he is, I will not open that can of worms, but I do not agree that he is gay canonically. But that Tarkin, being the debatably gay man that he is in canon, couldn't find a parking spot. And so rather than learn to parallel park properly, he just parked his shuttle on top of 500 Ghorman. So let's just take that for starters of being the Tarkin massacre.
The question is also like, why?
Because he couldn't find a parking spot.
But like that's just our joking, like,
No, we are
reasoning.
actually
Like,
not given any more reason other than he wanted to land his shuttle in the plaza and
right.
they wouldn't move.
Yeah, I don't
There are docking
understand.
bays. No, there are docking bays, and
Right.
he is a sector governor.
Right.
There is no fucking way that Sector Governor Tarkin or Admiral Tarkin at that point, whoever, whatever he was,
Right.
could not have gotten clearance to land somewhere. He wanted to land in the square. They weren't letting him, and so he just had them park the shuttle.
It's like, and I think he says something about how like they were protesting or something, and then yeah, Tarkin just is just like, fuck it. Like,
Fuck it, land the shuttle on him.
but like, how is that not a galaxy wide like something that everybody talks about? Like that just I don't understand that. Because before the propaganda, that people love Gorman. They love the fashion, they love the clothes, they love everything. It's Paris in Star Wars. So like there's no reason why if there was a massacre in Paris, we would all know about it. You know what I mean? Like it's not something that they would be able to keep quiet.
I am smugly smirking into the camera at the beauty of that segue because in Legends, this was the Gorman Massacre.
Oh,
Yes, this is what the Gorman Massacre was in Legends.
interesting.
Exactly this. Tarkin landed a shuttle on a bunch of protesters and killed a whole bunch of them. And it was actually a huge deal.
Whoa.
And it
Okay.
was actually the Gorman massacre on the level we see it. Like, it did galvanize a lot of people to, like, go into open rebellion against the Empire when he did this.
Got
So in
it.
Legends, this is the Gorman massacre.
Okay,
So
that
if you
makes
are
sense.
a Legends person and you watch these 3 episodes and you know this is the Gorman massacre, then you're thinking, okay, what's the canonical Gorman massacre? How much worse can this get? The answer is very. In canon, I don't know why this was not as big of a deal.
Right.
It clearly was a big enough deal that like the Empire honestly kind of like cowed to the Gormans a little bit, where they were like, we'll build you a monument, and then also we super promise none of our buildings will ever cast a shadow. Like that's literally in the charter that
Right.
they signed. The Imperial Charter says none of our buildings will ever cast a shadow on the Gorman monument for this. Like it was clearly the Empire, early days Empire had to do a whole bunch of damage control. But it's absolutely crazy. This is they found a way to work in the old Legends Gorman massacre and then also somehow make the canonical Gorman massacre worse.
I like that. I feel like they should do that more in Star Wars, where they like they'll take something from Legends, they'll make it be like, oh yeah, that thing happened, and then like be like, but here's something better.
Here's something slightly different.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they bring stuff from Legends over and do it slightly differently all the time. I love how much Enza thinks she has Cassian when they meet each other for the first time.
Right.
And she's like, oh, well, your friend might have come himself. She's so offended that Luthen's not there. She's like, well, your friend might have come himself. And he's just like, wow, y'all are so fucking bad at this.
He's basically like, how do you know I'm not the friend? How do you know I'm
And
not
she's like,
Luthen?
I don't know.
It's like,
Something, what? And he's like, uh-huh, yeah. Let's
yeah,
take a giant step back. This was a mess, and you're bad at this. Which he's right.
right,
There's an overarching theme in this episode of Cassian Andor is right, but he's being a dick about it. Which he kind of has to be, because he has to be very direct.
right,
In the rebellion, it's clear, particularly from the next episode, you have to be very direct, and they are trying to establish a like, can you follow orders? Can you stop doing what you're doing and change based on outside information. And I think he gets the sense that the Gormans are just way too prideful to do that.
Right.
And she just doesn't want to listen to anything he has to say, which also, from Enza's point of view, I get where she says, like, it's really hard to be patient when your whole world is falling apart around you. But I also think that goes back to the Gormans really only care about Ghorman.
Yeah, they're not really worried about the empire taking over as a whole. They're only worried about their oppression, which is fair, right? Like, yes, you can care about your own.
Reasonable.
Yeah, it's
Like, it's
reasonable. But yeah,
I don't think it's unfair of it's one of those brilliant writing things to where they're both kind of right and they're both kind of wrong. They're both at least justified in what they're saying
right.
to where I completely understand being like, you know, our local suffering needs to take priority over everything else. But on the flip side of the thing, that's not what Luthen is trying to build. He's trying to take down the Empire, not just keep them in line on Ghorman. And I also think that kind of when you think about it in the context of the Ghorman front doesn't believe that the Empire is evil. They believe that the ISB is running a shadow government and that the Empire as a concept can continue to exist. That makes a lot more sense, and also why Cassian clocks them immediately as being like, we need to have nothing to do with you.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of faith in them throughout all of the scenes, really. I mean, he kind of just it kind of progresses slowly throughout all of his different meetings, but I feel like he's just basically like, "Ooh, this assessment is not going well. You guys just don't really have it in you to like be a part of a group." It's kind of like that, like they want to play on their own team and they don't want to play with the actual rebellion.
I fear that Saw Gerrera's kind of continues to be right.
Right?
I hate to say it,
Yeah.
but I fear Saw Gerrera is kind of right when he talks about the other Rebel Zells. I do love that all of the main Gorman front people all work for Caro Rylands. Because that's the worst fucking idea in the world. To have all the leaders of your rebellion also work at the same shop.
Yeah, there's a moment, and I don't know what his name is because I'm sorry to all the actors who played the Gormans. There's so many of them. I think his character's name is Dylan or
The
Dylan.
Dylan,
Yeah.
yeah.
So he's kind of like the other main guy
The
in
one
the
who's
group.
like, the one who's like kind of a thing with Enza.
Right. They kind of
But
have
also, there's
something
a
together.
weird
Yeah.
little scene in the next act that kind of implies that Enza and Syril hooked up, which I think goes back to your theory that everyone on Gorman is both bisexual and in open relationships.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Yeah,
like
that guy.
yeah, that guy. So I think what happens is like there's a moment where they're in the shop together and then they're talking to Caro and he's kind of in the background like not being inconspicuous at all, trying to listen in on like what Cassian's saying because he wants to know what the real rebel guy is saying, but he's also trying to pretend to be a shop fashion person like I'm folding clothes, folding sweaters in the background like but they're just like not doing a very good job in this very open air store that anyone can see into the shop. Like it just keeps showing you how much they all just aren't great at what they're doing.
No, and like they say, oh, we've got a guy on the inside who's giving us information because Cyril gave them the transport
Sure.
schedules.
Yeah.
And Cassian is like, dude, feeding people information is what the ISB does.
Right. That's like all they do.
That's their job. Like,
But
come
they're
on,
but
man.
he comes in and he's like, no, 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 no. This guy's verified. Like he's definitely like 100% legit.
And it's fucking Cyril Karn.
Right. And it's like,
You verified Cyril Karn.
how did you verify him? Because you listened into his conversation with his mom? Like, you know what I mean? Like they, they just aren't
He's
thinking.
playing them so effectively.
Yeah.
And this is part of the thing that by the time Cassian arrives, it's too late. If Cassian had got here prior to that, if Cassian had been able to meet with the Gorman front and say, be advised, the ISB loves to filter information out. So if you get an Imperial contact that just seems too good to be true, trust nothing they say. This might not have happened, but he gets here too late. And now that he gets here and they're already locked into this plan, he basically tells them, nah, you need to throw everything you've been working on for years, out months and months and months at this point out. Of course they're going to be pissed about it.
Right.
He's right, but he's kind of coming off as a dick about it. Also, mixing our shots a little bit. I know we haven't crossed the storylines yet, but I do want to say Panning over to the Ghorman spider. Hi, I hope you like spiders. Cutting from this pan over of the Ghorman spider to the ISB,
Oh, okay.
like it cuts straight from the spider to the Imperial Security Bureau. The scene with Partagaz and Syril and Dedra that we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah.
Fucking genius.
I didn't,
Holy
yeah,
shit.
I didn't really catch
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Cutting from the spider to the ISB is a stroke of genius.
Well, I also just realized that like Imperial logo, I know it's supposed to be a cog, but it's also looks like a web. And it could
Hmm.
also be like they're catching the Gormans in their web, and even though they're supposed to be the spiders, like it's very like all symbolic and
It's all symbolic.
yeah.
I do want to read from the StarWars.com trivia guide, just a fun little fact that I found, because we do see the Ghorman truck heist escape tunnel for the first time.
Okay.
And quoting from the StarWars.com Andor trivia guide for week 2, quote, the Ghorman truck heist escape tunnel set was built into Pinewood Studios' paddock tank, where a little over 4 years earlier, the climactic duel between Rey and Kylo Ren on the wreckage of the second Death Star was staged for Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, end quote.
Yeah. That's cool.
So this is the same tank that they can fill up, which is also why we're getting that water.
Oh, okay. So it's a waterproof set.
Because they can pump water into the tank
Right.
because it's set up for drainage.
That's cool.
There is a note that the Gormans point out that the military trucks are always alone.
Hmm.
That the trucks travel in threes except for the ones carrying the military stuff, and those always travel alone. Weird.
Not a red flag at
Weird
all.
oversight.
Yeah. The
Anyway,
Empire must be really inefficient.
oh yeah, the Galactic Empire super
Right.
inefficient.
They wouldn't have guards guarding the actual military equipment shipments, but the non-important construction equipment, who cares? Let's get 3 trucks on that one. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. My next note it was when Kara Rylance and Cassian are having their conversation at the hotel bar, and it just reads Cassian is just shitting on this guy, even though he's completely right. Because by this point, Cassian's fucking done with these people.
yeah, he's over it. He's like, okay, I got it. He's like, this is a waste of time. They are way too inexperienced. They're way out of their league. They're not in it for
This
the
is
long haul.
this is not happening.
Yeah, it's not it.
And then the guy, Karo says to him, like, you're not much of a revolutionary, are you? Which is true at this point. Cassian will say to Luth in the next episode he's thinking like a soldier. So Cassian has not at this point become the full revolutionary. And I do think we are seeing that throughout this storyline with him
Right.
in this episode, that we're seeing that he has not fully become a revolutionary yet. He is still very much in the soldier mindset that we will still see by the time of Rogue One. But I think that's also part of why he clashes with the Ghorman front as hard as he does, is because they're more doing spy stuff and he's more doing soldier stuff, at least as far as the attitude that he has.
Section 4. On Coruscant, Syril visits Dedra at her apartment. She reveals she had him followed following orders from Partagaz. She also tells him they have 1 hour together and instructs him to turn off the light. Later, Syril gives his mother a souvenir spider, and though she initially recoils, she grows fond of it and nicknames it Syril. Later, at the ISB headquarters, Syril reports to Dedra and Partagaz about his successful infiltration of the Ghorman front. Syril suggests reliable transport schedules to bait the rebels. Partagaz approves. Syril is praised, calling it the best day of his life. Dedra looks annoyed, but is supportive.
God, this little cheek kiss thing is so fucking awkward.
The kiss on the cheek is so real for their relationship. Because it's like it's almost like he's it's twofold. I think it's both awkward and respectful in a way. Like it's so weird, like, but in like a he doesn't really know like how you're kind of like I don't know. They're just clearly not comfortable with each other, but also they're respectful of each other. Like this is a some kind
They're
of
acting
transaction.
respectful of each other, but
Yes.
yes.
There it's very like transactional like love. Like it's very much like this is what we do. We kiss each other and then we go have dinner and then like you know what I mean? It's
They
very like
well, somebody's eating something.
no,
Like,
they are not doing that. Oh, no. I can already tell you when
I
they
love
fuck,
the
they keep their shirts on, and like that's how this works. Because she even makes him turn off the lights because she doesn't want to see his pasty ass. Like, come on. You know that Syril is both super like there's nothing going on there. Like she's nothing not much
the
to look
most
at body wise.
vanilla. I take it
Yeah,
back. It is the vanilla, boring, lights out
100%.
missionary sex you have ever seen in your entire life. Like,
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. Because here's the thing, Bradley. I could going one of two. And this is the
Okay.
very important debate that people were waiting for us to have on our
Sure.
show about how the heterosexuals have sex.
Right.
Either it is the most boring vanilla shirts on missionary sex you have ever seen in your entire life, or it is the freakiest, nastiest shit you have cannot even comprehend some of the things that these two are into. And like the force should not be present in this room, which is why the lights need to be out.
The only thing I could think of that's like freaky that they do is that she definitely pegs him.
Oh, I don't think there is any debate whatsoever. None. None. It is very,
100%.
very
That's what
obvious.
she does.
Because
I just know that.
he is so weirdly into having the lights turned off. Like she
Yeah.
says, turn the lights off, and he's like,
He's like,
"Oh,
"Oh,
you had me followed, my brother in Christ. Do
right."
you think this is foreplay?"
Yeah, I like how she talks about how she had him followed, but it's like she realizes like, oh shit, I probably shouldn't have told him that. She's like, part of guys told me to do it. Like, but she did it because she thinks that he's probably incompetent. Like, and she doesn't think that he's gonna necessarily not be followed himself. Like, I don't know. I feel like she's kind of playing that role of like, I can't really trust him, but I kind of have to. But I'm like, I'm gonna make sure it's done right, basically. She's very controlling of the situation.
Also, I just need to ask, when they do the shot of turning the lights out, why does it have to linger for several seconds longer than is
I didn't
comfortable?
understand that choice because it's
I
fine
think
if
it's
like
just
there
meant
was,
to unsettle us.
is that what it is? Because it
I
was
think it's
just
just meant
weird.
to unsettle us.
I thought it was almost like this is where you chose to add an extra 3 seconds of footage in your entire show. That's 3 seconds you could have had literally anywhere else. Like, and you chose the part where they turn off the lights and just see the apartment go to black. Like, it is kind of weird, but it is fun. Like, it does elicit some response. So I feel like it did some kind of like I don't know. It's just gross, but it's very funny at the same time. And I almost wish that we would have gotten noises like or some kind of like kissing noises or
I thought we
something.
were about to get some.
Okay, okay, okay.
Like I genuinely thought we were about to get some like weird sex noises were going to happen in this scene. And no. Nope. It just lingers awkwardly on black for an
Just
extended period of time. It's the second most awkward after that random shot in the Gendy Tartakovsky one of Anakin and Padme making out, and then the window lights turn out, and it's like, oh, well, now we have an explanation for when Luke and Leia happened.
if I had a nickel for every time.
Listen, I just think it's really fucking funny. That volume 2 of the Clone Wars is really fucking funny. And I also need
Yeah.
more people to watch that show. And I also need more people to listen to our episodes on it.
I also need people to accept that they're all canon as well.
They're semi-canon.
I no, I fully believe they're fully canon.
The events there happened somewhat. We gotta move on. We gotta move on.
I know.
In the sequence in the ISB, we
Yes.
finally find out what Syril knows. And it turns out Syril thinks that Ghorman is being used to bait outside agitators to come in.
Mm,
That's what he thinks the mission is. He thinks the goal is to rile up the Ghorman front and get them to call in other rebels,
right. Which they did.
which they did. And Cassian correctly was like, I don't think we should be part of this.
Right.
But it's important that Syril is not in on the actual plan.
Right.
He thinks that they're using it as basically a honey trap to get like other flies out in the galaxy to come in by how attractive the Ghorman front is going to be to work with. And they're
Right.
definitely going to send people to support them, and then we can capture those people. Which doesn't make any fucking sense if you stop to think about it, but this guy wholeheartedly drinks the Kool-Aid. My next note, God bless him. I think this might actually be the greatest day of Cyril Karn's life.
I think it's both funny and sad because I think, yes, it is definitely the greatest moment of his life because an authority figure told him good boy. And then
This is easily our kinkiest discussion episode, I hate
I
to say.
I mean, this is what happens when you get all these lovely people fucking in this episode. But no, I think that it's funny that like also Dedra is so like I don't think she's like mad that he's getting praised, but I think she's also like unattracted to him. Like she's like, ugh, like you needed that? Like that's so pathetic. Like I mean,
I
just
think
kidding, good job.
yeah, she's like, "Oh, I'm so glad. I'm
She's
just
like,
glad
ugh,
that you're happy." And in her head,
right.
she's thinking like, "Dear
God.
Lord, dude,
She's like,
like,
what a fucking loser. Like
what a fucking loser."
that's why I don't understand their relationship. It's like I don't understand because like there's moments like this where she's like, ugh, like he's a means to an end. But then there's other moments where I'm like, she just likes to control him. Like
I,
it's
I
so weird.
think I think she how do I phrase this delicately? I think that Dedra does not understand how to be in a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
I think that she feels emotions that she classifies as romantic for Cyril, but I don't think she knows how to be supportive of a partner, and I don't think she knows what a relationship is supposed to feel like because she's doing the relationship y things like having dinner with his mom and physical intimacy and getting your partner involved in things that you do. But she's doing them in strange ways. I think she's a very fascinating character, and I wish we'd gotten more of this relationship because it is interesting the way that she's everything she does in this relationship is just slightly off, but at the same time, I don't subscribe to the theory that she was manipulating Cyril the whole time. I think there are definitely things she says in episode 8, and particularly her reaction to the events of episode 8 when we see her in episode 9 that do lead me to believe that she actually did genuinely have romantic feelings for Cyril or what she classified as romantic feelings for Cyril,
Right.
which in and of itself is fucked up because he stalked her and it was really fucking weird. And
Yeah.
if one thing is missing from the transition from season 1 to season 2, I need to know how we got from her being saved by him on Ferrix to they are now living together.
Yeah, there's
I
definitely a
need to know
missing
how
thing. Yeah.
that happened.
There's really a weird transitional period of her accepting his romantic advances of some kind. It's just really strange. Section 5. At the safe house on Coruscant, Bix cautiously enters a knock at the door to find Luthen. She expresses exhaustion from the ongoing conflict and doubts her own strength. Luthen believes she is not in the right state of mind. He shows concern for her health after noticing a vial of medication. Luthen warns that it won't fix her nightmares, emphasizing that he needs her to stay healthy. Later, Bix watches a holo show called Good Morning Coruscant, hosted by Toffee and Muffy. She appears exhausted, holding a blaster and struggling to stay awake.
So I think Luthen is really interesting in this scene, in that he kind of starts to give Bix like a pep talk
Right?
because she's masking really well what's going on. She's like putting up a very brave face and she's saying all the right things and she's like, "Oh, well, maybe, I'm stronger than you think, or maybe you're not as strong as you think, and I could totally be on missions." And he's like trying to get her to go on one. And then he sees the drugs. And Luthen, in a moment where it kind of would make more sense for him to like keep going with his original plan, backs off. He won't put her on a mission.
Yeah, he thought
And
about it for a second. Yeah.
I don't think based on the way he's talking, I don't think this is a practical decision.
I think
I
it's in
think
the
he
moment.
I think it's in the moment and I
Yeah.
think that the way he talks about it, Luthen talks like someone who has tried to use drugs to mask these types of things before. And I think he does understand what she's going through and that it would not be healthy for her.
Right.
You want to know my wild theory?
What's that?
I think he was going to give her Gorst now.
Interesting. Oh, now he was going to give it to her. Right. Because
He
he was
was
going to
going
be
to
like,
give her
hey,
Gorst
guess what I
now.
have? Yeah.
I think he expected Cassian to stay on Ghorman longer, which is part of why in the next episode he starts being a little like, well, you're back super early. I did not expect it to take this short a time. You barely
Yeah.
looked around. I think he was going to send Cassian to Ghorman, and I think he was going to give Bix Gorst alone.
Hmm.
And when he saw the state that she was in, he backed off on that.
Well, because like even when she first answered the door, she was like, "Oh no, Cassian's dead." Basically, she
Yeah,
was
that
like,
was her first reaction.
her
Cassian's
first
dead.
reaction was instantly like, "Oh shit!"
Oh
Like
shit, he's
he's
dead.
dead. Yeah. And then Luthen's like, "No, no, no, just I'm just here. I'm just here to say hi." Like it was actually kind of funny for a second, and then he goes, "Oh, wait a minute. The state of things don't really make me believe you're ready for your own solo mission right now." And he even tells her like, "Hey, you can take this medication and it's gonna work. Like you're gonna not have the nightmares at first. And then the second you go off the medication, like they're gonna come back like even worse."
Abusing drugs like this is only ever a short term solution to a long term problem that will ultimately then create more problems.
Right.
It never, ever works like this if you're using them for the purpose, if you're self medicating to this degree, using as strong of drugs as Bix is clearly using for the purposes of just pretending your trauma doesn't exist. That is bad. And that will negatively impact you, and that will negatively impact the people around you. And I am speaking from deep personal experience on that front. You will start damaging yourself first, and then you'll start damaging the people around you. And it really, for them to make this choice in here is really fascinating. But then also Luthen's reaction, knowing that this is, it's not going to help.
Right.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're going to be right back where you started, just with more physical and mental strain than you did when you started, which is, I really loved this scene with Luthen. This scene really, I was skeptical of Luthen. I didn't really like him. This arc in this scene kind of turned me around on him a little bit because what he's saying is absolutely correct.
Right. And it almost kind of seems like he's speaking from experience.
He's absolutely speaking from experience.
Right. Like he's like, "Oh, I have basically already done this whole entire show and dance like that you're doing right now. And I can tell you that like don't go down this road."
Yes. I guess I'll transition too into the next scene, which is we'll talk about the fun elements of the scene
Yeah,
first.
let's talk about the fun parts.
Do you have anything of the on the you called them in our text message chain Hunger Games drag queens?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know who's responsible for these characters other than I mean, I guess I'll give it to Bo Willimon because he's the writer, but I feel like there's someone else came up. There's no way. This is such a like a left field thing. Mafi and Toffee are played by the same person. It
Yes.
is Ruby Wax is the actor's name. She she has been in something that I feel like everybody knows. It's the only thing I recognize on here. She was in a series called Absolutely Fabulous. She's only in 2 episodes, but I feel like that's something that everybody knows for like terms of like gay culture. It's like a old,
Hmm.
kind of thing. She was in that. I didn't recognize any of the other stuff, but a lot of it looks very like campy, like,
She's
stuff.
big into camp.
Yeah.
Looking at her IMDb page, she's very big into camp.
So it's just funny that she goes from all these super campy things to playing in a Star Wars, which I love that just the concept of it gives the Star Wars Christmas special vibes. Like it's very much this is a hollow net show that it's called Good Morning Coruscant. First of all, let's talk about how dumb that is, but how amazing at the same time that this is a show that clearly Edie Carn watches every morning.
Oh, clearly.
Like
Very obviously.
and I love how they're just talking and they're just like shooting the shit on Good Morning Coruscant. Like it's so funny.
It's hilarious. And it's also providing like important exposition
Exposition, yes.
within the context of this, which is amazing. It's important exposition, it's hilarious, it's great, and then we cut to Bix lying on the bed, clearly having taken the drugs during the day.
Right. So now
So
we know it's
we
being
remember
abused.
she
Yeah.
only took them at night.
Right.
Now she has started taking them during the day. Well, either, I don't know, because I've just realized, oh no, we see her taking them again.
I
Yeah,
think
so
yeah, I
clearly
think
clearly
yeah.
she is taking them during the day at this point. She is stuck in her apartment. She has got no one around her. She is not processing her trauma in a healthy way. She is on a bunch of substances and just vegging out and watching TV. And this is the most uncomfortable scene for me to watch.
Yeah.
It's very quick, but the minute I saw the look on her face, I know that look because I have also seen it in the mirror. So this one, it's so short, the Bix arc is,
Right.
but this is a thing I am comfortable talking about is I had a period where I was substances in order to not deal with the trauma. And it was exactly the same thing. I started out as being like, I'm going to handle this stuff reasonably. I'm going to do it, just for fun, or I'm going to do it just on the weekends or whatever. And over a span of time, as things happened and I started using it to mask and I started using it to not deal with my problems, this is exactly what happened is I started using stuff more frequently. Rules started flying out the window, and the next thing you know, you're on a 3-day bender sitting on the couch
Right.
watching old movies on daytime TV because you just don't go anywhere. And so I obviously got help eventually, which I would encourage anyone if you are listening to the sound of my voice and you feel like you need to get help. There are programs out there are people out there that can help you. I definitely got help. I have a much healthier relationship with alcohol now, and I have a much healthier relationship with medication now. It's much better, but watching the way this is portrayed and the accuracy of it made me feel a certain type of way about it. I applaud the writers of Andor for one, doing this, and two, doing it in a way that I never felt like the show itself was moralizing to Bix. Like, I feel like it gave us a degree of empathy with her and why she's doing this very clearly unhealthy thing. There's not a point, we don't have turn to the camera and have an after school special drugs are bad message.
Right.
It's like nobody turns to the camera and says, and that's why you shouldn't abuse sleep medication in order to not feel things. Like, nobody does that, but it treats it both realistically and it shows her overcoming this, which I think is very important to show her go through an unhealthy coping mechanism before she can go to a healthy coping mechanism, and more ones that we see later on in the show. That was a lot of really, really heavy shit in the same scene that we have the Hunger Games drag queens doing daytime television. But that's the beauty of Andor.
No, it really is. I think I love the duality of it. I love that it is such a serious scene, but then it is this really fun, campy thing. But I think you're right. It's just that it's supposed to represent just that daytime television of like garbage TV that no one's really watching. But it's like, because they're talking, I think they're discussing like both politics, but also like fashion. Like they're like, oh, what are they going to wear to the Imperial Ball? But like, wait a minute, let's talk about the politics. Like,
Yeah,
it's
and
just such
I
a
would
good.
absolutely watch the show. Oh, the line, I want to talk about the parties. Political parties? No, the senatorial parties.
Right. It's such a good I
It's
mean, goddamn.
Bo Willimon's writing this is the weakest arc, but
Yeah.
God, the writing is still so good. It's only the weakest arc because it is up against fucking the last two arcs,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
which good luck. Like even going
Yeah,
from the
there's
last
nothing you
arc
can
to
do
Rogue
about it.
One, I was like, we have gone down in quality for the
Yeah.
writing, even between them. And Rogue One is a fucking great movie. I love that movie, but even then, there is a notable difference between going from the final episode and then to Rogue One.
Section 5. On Dakar, Wilmon supervises Pluty as they work on the extraction machine. Pluty grows frustrated with the multiple variations required to operate it and asks Wilmon who taught him, but he doesn't respond. Wilmon reminds him that he can't leave until Pluty learns how to operate the machine properly. Later, Saw grows weary of Wilmon's continued presence, suggesting getting rid of him, but Pluty defends him. Saw mentions Pluty's lack of confidence, but reveals a secret mission happening later that night. Saw later confronts Wilmon and Pluty, killing Pluty and accusing him of betrayal, revealing an ambush planned by the Empire. The partisans evacuate the base. A shocked Wilmon is told it's all on him now. On another planet, Wilmon operates the machine while Guerrera prepares for action. Saw recounts his time as a prisoner in a jungle work camp with harsh and inhumane conditions, emphasizing the pain and sacrifice tied to revolution. Wilmon opens a valve, releasing toxic rhydonium vapor, and Saw nostalgically connects to its smell to memories of his sister. He pushes Wilmon to embrace suffering as part of joining the cause, and motivated by Saw, Wilmon symbolically joins the partisans by removing his mask and inhaling the toxic fumes despite the pain.
I love how Wilmon knows to keep his goddamn mouth shut.
The second he was like, "So where'd you learn this?" Wilmon's like,
And Wilmon is like, mind your business.
Yep, I don't know what you're talking about. Next question."
Well, because Wilmon is not stupid. Wilmon
Well,
has learned several very important lessons from the events of Mina Rao. And one of them is keep your goddamn mouth shut. And so he is doing great OPSEC and he is keeping his goddamn mouth shut. He is not telling him Pluty a thing, which is good for Wilmon. A couple things on the scene with Saw Gerrera and Pluty. According to the StarWars.com secrets of from the set of Andor episodes 5 through 4, 5, and 6, quote, sections of the roast mastiff prop that Saw's rebels are cooking on a spit were actually edible, placed on the prop by a food stylist, end quote.
okay, because I saw like Wilman takes a bite of it at one point, and I'm like, wow, that was like that's a really good little prop thing that he just ate. But I was like, oh wait, it's probably actually
Yeah, it's
food.
like actually edible.
Yeah,
I think the bit that we're seeing on camera is not,
right.
but the bit that he pulls off and he eats is actually edible. I saw one quote, I think it was from Diego Luna, talked about the set designers on Andor, how they were so good that like if there was, he said if there was a kitchen set, the drawers had utensils in them.
Wow.
He said you could walk around the set, like they would have days where the set designer would take them around set and explain to the actors, this is what everything does. Like the set designs on this are crazy, the props on this are crazy.
I love that.
Saw immediately sees through Pluty's bullshit. Like Saw's just using him, but I do also want to point out one of the things we're going to see with Saw in the final arc and then in Rogue One is he's starting to become more paranoid about spies.
Right. Everyone's out to get him.
Everyone's out to
Yeah.
get him.
Hmm.
Spies, assassins,
Spies.
assassins. Yeah. That's my best Saw Gerrera.
That's your best Saw impression. There you go.
Yep. They're all coming to get him, and we see he's right. Again,
No, yeah.
I hate the fact that in this show, Saw Gerrera is usually right.
Which sucks.
Which sucks because he sucks, but he's also correct. Like, not to skip ahead too much to episode 12, but when he's like, your spies in my organization have not revealed to you my location, yada, yada, yada. And he turns off the comm, and somebody, I think it's Draven, is like, yeah, no, we actually have had guys in his organization.
I love that
He's
though.
completely right.
I love though that like so far from what I can tell, there's only three people that Saw completely trust. One of them is two tubes. The other one would have to be three tubes or whoever the fuck his brother's, whatever his twin brother or whatever his name is.
Yeah, the guy from Rebels.
Yeah, and then the other one is what is the giant Yeti guy, whatever his name is, Moroff? Is that his name?
I don't know.
Whatever. But those are like the only three we see with Saw all the time. So I feel like that's like okay, he can trust two tubes for sure. Like and yeah, but everybody else is out to get him. So I also when I first watched this, I thought maybe like because I didn't quite understand at first that Pluty was actually a spy. I thought the way I saw it what originally was that Pluty was not confident in himself and Saw didn't have time for someone who didn't know what they were doing and was like, well, Wilman already knows the combinations. So I'm just gonna fucking kill two birds with one stone here. Luthen has given me this guy. I'm going to use him and I'm going to just have him do it because he's already here. So it's easier for me to make, Wilman do it than to like train some random guy. Now, obviously, that isn't the case because, it turns out he was an Imperial spy, but I just think it's funny that I took it more as like, oh, he's just not confident in himself. I'm gonna kill him because he's just not worth my time.
Nope, he's a spy. Sorry to tell you, he's a spy. Which makes a lot of his interactions make more sense. And it came as a shock to me when Saul
No, for
fucking guns him down.
Well, that's what's such a
But
good like thing. Such a good fake out because he points the gun at Wilmon first, and he's like, "So, are you 100% confident that you know what like that you taught him everything?" And he's like, "Yep, nope, he definitely got it. I promise." Like, and
Woolman's
then
answer
bam,
is great here, by the way, where he's
yeah,
like, I have taught him everything I can. That like he does a really good job of like answering this question, but then yeah, Pluto gets fucking shot.
yeah.
And again, Saw Gerrera sucks, but he's kind of right. I'm so glad we read Mask of Fear because Mask of Fear talks a lot about how Saw Gerrera will change his story slightly depending on the audience. And timeline wise, it doesn't really make sense that he would be around Wilmon's age when he's in this work camp.
Okay,
If you stop and think about it for a minute, it doesn't really make sense. However, we do know that Saw changes his stories.
right.
I absolutely think his story about working in a work camp, watching people succumb to the Rhino, actually did happen. I just think he's twisting it slightly to relate to Wilmon, which is a thing we know from the Mask of Fear Saw does.
Right.
God, that's such a good book. You mentioned in your recap that he like connects the Rhino to his sister.
Hmm.
I had a different interpretation of the scene.
Okay.
I think that it's really interesting that they put this in the same episode with the Bix drug stuff because the feeling that he used to feel of like happiness when his sister was alive, I think he is equating the feeling of the Rhino of being high and the itching and stuff, the way that that makes him happy and like feel this elation and joy to the feelings he had when his sister was alive. But either way, it's really fucked up. He calls the Rhino his sister.
That's what I'm. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's like,
It's like, oh, you've started losing it. You started
yeah.
up in paint.
Well, I think Pack is like, our woman's like, oh, you're fucking like, you're crazy.
You're
You're literally
crazy.
crazy.
You're crazy. Well, he says they call me crazy. Yes, I am. But also knowing that per the Rogue One novelization, Saw Gerrera's final thoughts ever before he fucking dies will be about Steela, his real sister. Going back and watching this and then thinking about the way he throws the breathing tube off, because now the breathing tube this is an actual retcon. This is an actual retcon. Originally, it was a breathing tube because it was supposed to bring him in line with Darth Vader, and he was supposed to kind of need it to breathe. Now he's clearly just huffing stuff.
Right. Towards the
That's
end.
what
Yeah.
this is.
Hmm.
And in the original interpretation of Rogue One, at least that I had, he throws away the breathing tube because he's dying as a human. He doesn't want to be this paranoid machine anymore. He's going to die as himself. He throws away the tube. Now it's better in my mind because now he's clearly huffing something. He's going to throw that away. He's going to think about his sister, his real sister,
Right.
and he's going to go join her. And that almost makes me feel bad for Saw Gerrera.
Almost.
Almost. No, this shit's crazy. The literally the only other note I have for this scene is this is just an incredible scene. Like, how do I break this down? How do I cover this? How do I try to dissect this with any meaningful way besides just fucking look at it?
Yeah, it's so strange because I know in like my little recap I kind of say like he symbolically is joining them, but I'm also kind of thinking like, but because there's no explanation later on in the arc, it doesn't I don't know if that's actually accurate or not because I feel like he does accept it because he's like, okay, I'll take off my mask and I'm gonna start huffing the drugs. Like it's almost like he's drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Like that's kind of like the whole point is I think that Saw has essentially like radicalized him enough to be
That's
like,
what this is. This
yeah,
is an incredibly radical speech,
yeah,
which would set up, something incredible for Wilmon's character arc, except we don't do
that
that.
part. It's such a great setup to nothing.
Yeah, he shows up on Yavin. He's been with the Ghorman front, but we don't ever find out like did he leave Luthen for a while?
Yeah.
Was he like not talking to Luthen? We don't know. We don't know. And that does, I think, ultimately make this scene weaker in the grand scheme of things, but that does not take away from the fucking masterclass of directing, cinematography, and acting. If this is really Forrest Whitaker's big moment in this season, it's just good to watch this man fucking act his ass off.
Yeah.
All right. Same writer, same director. We don't have to do all that again. Let's move on to our final thoughts. Bradley, what are your final thoughts on this episode?
Final thoughts. I have friends everywhere. I have might have friends everywhere, but I don't have a lot of like different plots that are interesting. I don't know. It's all kind of a lot of the same. I don't know if this is like you're right because it is the weakest arc out of all the arcs. It's not a bad three. It's not a bad arc. It's just it's the least interesting. I think it's a lot of we're trying to be rebels. We're doing a bad job. You're telling us we're doing a bad job. And then we're setting up the actually good part of the arc, which is a different arc. So I don't love that. And this is one of the weaker episodes of the season for sure. I think these three are probably the weakest. It's also one of the longer episodes, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Like this is nearly an hour long. Like it is long, and I don't think it needs to be.
As evidenced by the timestamp on this episode
That
that you
part,
are currently listening to.
I don't understand why we're even talking about this long because like it genuinely is like it's not that much stuff happens, honestly. So I don't know. I think that even though there are moments in this episode where we were like, oh, that was trimmed for time and blah blah blah, I almost think like this could have been trimmed even more, which is crazy to say. But there's some things I think that like, especially with all the Cassian scenes, I feel like a lot of the Cassian stuff is all just let's have the same conversation just in different settings, which is fine. But I feel like I literally could have had him meet Kara one time and then that was it. We didn't need anything else. I really think that's all that they needed to do. So other than that, I thought it was an okay episode.
My final thoughts on I have friends everywhere in this plot. Episode was a lot of really good, interesting moments that continue to just be set up. We're continuing from last week of we're very much in the setup phase, and this whole arc is just going to be the setup phase. There's going to be a little payoff next episode, but really we're setting up the next block of 3 episodes, and that'll continue throughout all of this. I agree with you in that we're kind of in a weird situation where if it feels like we both have too much of the plot elements, but also not enough of them. And I do think that had this been a longer show, which unfortunately we cannot divorce it from the fact that it was supposed to be a longer show, things like the Morlana 1 reference they wouldn't have been passed over so quickly. We would have gotten more time with the Ghormans as characters rather than just as a group that's pretty homogenous. We don't see them argue very much. We don't find out a lot about them out of the context of being the Ghorman front. And I do think that is definitely something that would have been explored and probably was needed for this arc. But they're doing the best they can, and they have opted to pack a lot of setup into 3 episodes and then pay off the fuck out of it in the next 3. So we're just waiting to get to that next 3. All right, what are we talking about next week, Bradley?
Next week, we're talking about episode 6, What a Festive Evening.
Pluggables! You can find a whole bunch of TV shows that Bradley has worked on places like Netflix, Bravo, and Peacock. These include shows like later seasons of Married to Medicine, Temptation Island, later seasons of The Circle, Queen's Court, and King's Court, coming July the 13th to Bravo. You can also find me on the Star Wars TTRPG podcast For Light and Dice. That is a Star Wars actual play TTRPG podcast set in the High Republic era. You can also find queer mystery thriller books that I write. Those are called Beach House Studios. 3 books in the series are all available on Amazon, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, and you can request that your local library get the ebooks through Overdrive. Fuck me and this stupid microphone. Run the socials so I can go buy a new one. Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com and let us know. You can follow us on BlueSky, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Gold Squadron Gaze. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gaze, where we post full episodes of this podcast. If you like the podcast, you can also rate us and review us on your favorite podcast app of choice. Please join us next week and every week for another episode of Gold Squadron Gaze.
Like, it does not want to go in this time. Which I've heard that one before. I
You
keep
can.
forgetting. I keep forgetting to order the new microphone until we record, and then I remember to order the new microphone, and then I forget as soon as we stop recording.